Hello everyone, welcome to LimeGuru channel. In this video, we are going to start with the Java tutorial. So let's get started. So the first topic we are going to discuss in Java tutorials is introduction to Java, and the first thing that we are going to discuss is what is Java. So let me write down here what is Java. What is Java? So Java, it's one of the programming language which is used to code your software program. So it is one of the programming language which is used to code your software program. Used to code your software program. So let me explain what I mean here. So whenever you need to implement any software program, you need to write a code, right? And in order to write a code, you need some programming language, right? So Java is one of the programming language which could be used to build your software program. When I say code your software program, it means it can be used to develop your software program. Developers will use one of the programming language to do the coding, to develop the software program, and Java is one of that programming language. There are other programming languages also available. Let's say there is C available, C++ is also available, Python is available, Golang is available. So there are many programming languages available, and Java is also one of the programming language which you can adopt, which you can use to code your program. And Java is pretty much different from other programming language in terms of how do you code, how do you implement, how do you write, how do you develop your software program using Java. It's very much different from the other programming languages, and we will discuss these features, that how you implement the code, how you implement your software programs using Java, using this programming language, right? We'll discuss it in detail, but what I wanted to cover here is that Java, it's a one of the programming language which is used to code your program, right? Now I'll touch base upon another topic, which is like how Java is different from another programming languages. So let me write down here how Java is different. How Java is different. So as I mentioned, that Java is different from other programming languages, and one of the most differential feature of Java is that it is known as a object oriented programming. Let me write down here object oriented programming. This is a very important concept in Java, and most of the concept in Java will revolve around this concept, which is object oriented programming. So I'm going to focus on this thing, like what is object oriented programming, because it's going to be most beneficial for you if you understand this concept thoroughly. So let me write down here object oriented programming, or in short, this is also called OOPS concept. So if you see what is the full form of OOPS stand for, here O stand for object, second O stand for oriented, and P stand for programming. So this is known as object oriented programming, right? So this is also called OOPS concept. And why Java is called object oriented programming? Because in Java everything is implemented in the form of the objects. Whenever you need to write a program, you need to think in the dimension of the objects, right? What I mean by objects is, let's say you want to implement the program for a car, so you will think car as an object. Let's say you want to implement the program for a calculator, so calculator, you will implement it as in the dimension of an object. So everything you will think in the dimension of the object. Everything you will think in the world of objects. You will consider any entity within the Java for which you want to implement the program. You will consider that entity as an object, and then you will start thinking about writing the code, right? I'm telling you, I'm not going into details like how do you implement the code, how do you implement the object. I'm going to discuss everything in detail, practically and theoretically also, in the later videos. But what I wanted to cover here is that whenever you want to implement anything in Java, you need to think in the world of space, in the world of objects, right? Let's take any other example. Let's say you want to implement any program for a train, right? So you will think train as an object. Anything you want to implement for student, so you will think student as an object. So everything you will think in the dimension of the objects, and then it would be easy, it will become easier for you to think Java as a object oriented programming language, right? So this is why Java is called a object oriented programming language, because in Java world, everything you will think in the in the dimension of object. And how it is different from other programming language, because in other programming language, let's say if I talk about C or Python, you don't think about objects. What you think about is the functions. You are mainly concerned about functions. Let's say if you want to implement something for calculator, you will think about what are you will just think of, you will start implementing the functions for calculator instead of thinking about the object as a calculator. You will directly start implementing the functions for calculator. And what are the functions for calculator? Like functions for calculator would be like add, subtract, multiply, division, multiply, division. So these would be the functions of calculator, just for example, right? In the functional programming language like C, as one of the example, you will directly implement the functions without implementing the object. But in Java, you will first need to think about these functions as an object. You will first say that calculator is my object. Calculator is my object, and within this object there are multiple functions: add, subtract, then multiply, and division. So if I talk about the distinction between C or Java, in C or in functional programming language, you will only implement these things, which is only functions. But in Java, how it is different is that you will need to create objects also by the name of calculator, right? So you will think about the objects also, and under the objects you will implement different functions for that particular object only. So this thing is extra in Java, which gives various benefits also, that you're able to categorize your objects, right? So if you are implementing something for calculator will have functions for only specific to calculator only. So if you're implementing anything for a particular object, the functions for that object would only be implemented within that object, right? So this is why Java is called object oriented programming, because you first will think about the object, then after thinking about the object, you will think about different functions which can be added within that object, right? So this is how Java is this is why Java is called object oriented programming. And this is very important concept, as I mentioned in the start of this topic, because everything in Java will revolve around objects, and everything will revolve in Java will revolve around this concept, which is object oriented programming. So I hope you get the idea why Java is called object oriented programming, right? And I also a little bit touched upon the difference between functional programming and object oriented programming. In object oriented programming, you will think about the object first, and then you will think about the functions for that object. But in the functional programming, you will just think about the functions. You will not think about the objects. You will start implementing the functions directly without thinking about their objects, right? So this is the main difference between functional programming and object oriented programming, right? Now I'll give you some of the examples of that how object oriented programming is different from functional programming, right? So I'll give you some examples, object oriented programming examples in Java. So this is just for your understanding of this topic. This will make your understanding more clear with respect to the object-oriented programming concept, that you would be able to relate that how objects are created within Java. You would be able to visualize that how you can think of the objects in Java whenever you need to think of the object-oriented programming concepts in Java, right? So let's take an example of a car. Right. So whenever you want to implement the program or coding for a car, the first object that will come to your mind is the car itself. So the object that you will think for implementing car program is the object would be the car itself, right? So this would be your object. Now you are thinking in a object oriented programming manner. So the first thing, as I said, you need to think about the object. So for implementing the car program, the object would be car. Now you have finalized that this is your object. The next thing would be like what all functions or features this car can have, right? So let's say I'll take two examples. The car can have two functions. Let's say one is the let's say accelerate function, which will let's say speed up your car. accelerate function, and second function would be the, let's say, apply brake function. So this function would be used to apply some brakes on your car, right? So these are the features of the car, these are the functions of the car. The functions you will think once you have finalized your object. Car is your object, and any function specific to this object, any function specific to car, would be decided later on once your object has been finalized. So this is how you implement object oriented programming concepts in Java, that first you are thinking about the object, then you are thinking about the functions. In functional programming, you will just think about the functions, you will not think about the object, right? So this is the difference between functional and object oriented programming, and this is how you will visualize objects and functions within your Java program, right? Let's take another example. Let's say you want to implement a program for a bird, and let's say you want to implement two functions, that bird can fly and bird can eat, right? So the first thing you need to visualize is what would be the object for implementing such kind of functions, right? Where a bird can fly or a bird can eat, right? So the first thing is the object identification. So here the object identification, let's say I can say that bird will become your object, right? Bird will become your object, and let's say it has two functions, let's say fly and eat. So bird can fly also, bird can eat also. So this would be your object, and these would be the features of the object, right? These are the features of this object only, which is bird object, right? Another example could be, let's say you want to implement the program for calculator itself. Calculator. So in the calculator, your object will become calculator itself, and the functions available, can you guess what would be the functions available in calculator? So as I mentioned in my previous example also, let's say there are four functions or four features of the calculator which can help you to add two numbers, subtract two numbers, multiply two numbers, or divide two numbers. Let's say these are the four features available for your calculator object. Now again in Java, you have decided the object first, which is your calculator, and then you have thought upon the what are the features of these object, which is the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So can you visualize here? I gave you multiple example. I gave you the example of a car, I gave you the example of a bird, I gave you the example of calculator. So can you visualize here, can you relate here that how you are thinking in object oriented programming way, that whenever you want to implement a program for anything, you need to visualize it first. After visualization, you need to think upon what would be the object for that. Let's say the object could be car or a bird or a calculator. Once you have visualized or thought upon the object, then you will start deciding what all features should exist within that object. Let's say for a car, it can accelerate or it can apply the brake, right? For a bird, it can fly or eat. For a calculator, it can add, it can subtract, it can multiply, it can divide, right? So the features corresponding to object reside within that object only. The features does not interfere among each other. It's not like that car features will come in calculator or calculator features will go in bird, right? So every feature which resides in the object belongs to that object only, and this is the great benefit in Java, that you are able to categorically separate out different features in different objects, right? So this is the main readability advantage in Java, that car will have its own features only, bird will have its own features only, and calculator will have its own features only. There is no interference of features among different objects. But in functional programming, this was not the way. In functional programming, within you can have multiple functions which are not related to each other also in the same file, right? Because there was no concept of object. Different functions can interfere with each other, and that does not give the good readability or good coding practices. But instead Java gives you the flexibility to define features for a particular object only, which does not interfere with each other, right? So I hope you got the idea, like how OOPS concept are implemented in Java, right? I'm just going to revisit some of the concepts which I discussed. I started with the introduction to Java, which I said that it's a programming language to code your program. Then I moved on to the little bit some more concepts in Java, like how Java is different in an object oriented way, how you think of objects, how you visualize the objects, and then I gave you some examples to better provide you some more visualizations in terms of some examples, like let's say you want to implement car, bird, or a calculator, then how you will visualize your object, and within those objects how you will relate your different features and how you will embed different features within that object itself, right? So that was the introductory video to Java, introductory session to Java, like what Java is and why it is called object oriented programming. I hope you got the idea. That's it about this video. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, do not forget to share it with others and do not forget to subscribe LimeGuru channel. Thank you.